And we'll start with the pledge. We'll get them out of this. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I appreciate you keeping me straight, though. Somebody has to, because I forget stuff. Hey, we all do. What'd I do?
Sorry about that.
Okay. The first thing is the minutes from last night's meeting.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of May 1st, 2018.
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second. Look it over, and if we have any corrections or changes or any issues.
I have, it's a correction. It's on number 6, annual town meeting warrant, Article 18 and 19.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't sure I got that right.
I know, it doesn't make any sense. It's chapter 44, which is right, section 53F and a half.
Oh,
Like
Okay,
Fred,
right.
Fred and a half.
I don't know how you get a half of an F, but
Well, that's,
F.
I didn't write it.
that's the state legislature.
And I've been checking it again, and that's exactly what it
44
is.
point what?
Chapter 44, section 53F and a half.
I should know that. Run into that a little bit.
okay. So for both of them, right?
Yeah.
Same
Yes.
article, same. All right.
That's the enterprise fund, Mass General Law. Okay, let's see. That one.
Maybe later I can sneak out, use your phone. I forgot mine and I gotta have Bart move it so, because you don't get it. Not yet, he's on the tractor spraying.
All right.
She's outside. Okay.
Okay. Is anything else? All right, hearing none. Motion to accept the minutes of May 1, 2018. Paul?
Yes.
Bev?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Will?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right. Now for, we had a question last night, a discussion, and I emailed you, I don't know if you got it or not, or saw it. It was concerning, it's not a big thing, well, we were looking at the budget, and I was going through with paper copy, and a couple members have the electronic.
Right.
So the summary that I know has been changed a couple of times.
I know exactly what happened, I don't know how it happened. So, the revised page 10
Right.
that we gave you with that packet is the 8/2/20/231.
Now, the bigger is,
If you looked at the revised page 5A, there's $67 surplus. I don't know how I did it. Somehow, when I went to write the warrant article, I grabbed the 220,331, I added the 67. That's where the 98 comes from.
Okay, like I said,
So,
it's,
that's fairly easily fixed. I can either increase one of the departments, snow and ice, by $67. Now I don't have to, the motion for the warrant, for the budget is right, or I can reduce the motion for the operating budget by $67.
okay. That was, like I said, we were doing the math all kinds of different ways. I know that it was done because the schools, like I said, I explained, the school subcommittee budget and then the
It got
school-
caught up in all that. It should have been the 8,220,331, and as I say, I must have had those sheets open side by side and just added them together when I was doing the warrant article.
Yeah, I wish we would've caught it sooner, but like I said, we were going down through the warrant just to,
Yeah, me too, but, you know, it's not a real problem. Most likely, I will just increase the snow and ice budget by the $67, so I don't have to disturb the underlining warrant article.
okay, so the 67 difference.
So we can add this to snow and ice
Okay,
to leave the amount at the 8,220,298.
Yeah, whatever it is, we'll increase the budget by 67 and reduce
yeah,
the
that's the
omnibus budget
difference.
Okay.
by 67, whatever's the simplest thing to do.
So, okay, so that's an easy fix.
Would it be easier if we just went through the warrant articles, and if there's
We
no
can,
real questions on it, we can just pass over them? I've got quite a few handouts here for you.
Do we have to open the Freetown?
well, I was trying to get some questions answered, and
First?
the
Okay.
Freetown is at 7.
Oh,
Right.
it's 7? Okay, sure
Yeah.
then. What else did you have then, Mr. Chairman?
What was the one?
Start at the beginning.
We'll do that during presentation.
No, I mean, the questions.
For the
Article-
future, we've taken, just so you'll know, we've taken to posting public hearings as at 6:30 or as soon thereafter as the agenda permits. You know, just so you can move business along.
Article 25 is the supplemental for the operating budget for the inspection workload.
25, yes.
And last year, that was 25,000. And when we were going through the budget to actual, for the third quarter financial, there's still $18,000 left.
There is. Last year, it was the fall. We really didn't know what the weather was gonna like. We really didn't know how quickly they were going to get going. So we kind of grabbed that number without really having any way to really estimate it. So they are a little bit ahead of schedule. They're expecting, the plan was to have steel this week and to start setting that up. They have the application for the building permit. We've given them a foundation permit, demolition permit first, foundation permit. Now we're ready to grant the full. So we think the 50 will be enough. You know, we might have to supplement it during the year. It's gonna depend upon weather and delivery of materials. labor issues, if they should have any, and the progress of the work. And just to remind you, there will be a supplemental in FY 2020 as well.
When will the complete permit be issued?
I believe that's expected to be issued within the next 10 days.
So by town meeting?
Yes.
One thing we can cover, and I believe I CC'd you with a question about concerning the E911 grant.
Yes, so the beginning fiscal year balance, the revenue we've collected, the expenses so far, and the available balance. Here is a report from Kelly.
What article is that, Jeffrey?
No, this is just off the budget
Oh,
versus
all right.
actual,
Okay,
where
all right.
we were
Yeah, on
looking,
I know on your, all right, I found
Where-
it. I'm not sure
the
my-
March one had an allocated amount, and then April had a larger one.
Yep.
Expendables was the same, and then with the revenue,
Well, let me know if you have any follow-up questions, and we'll do our best to get you the answer to that.
okay, there is.
We also have a transfer request for you this evening, Mr. Chairman.
I can put that on next Wednesday's
that's fine.
agenda.
May I speak to it now, though, and then you can just...
Oh, yeah, yes.
Sure, okay.
Yeah,
So we've got about 5,400, about 5,365 left in the Veterans Benefits account. That'll get us through much of May, but we want to be certain. So we're requesting a $7,000 transfer from the other benefits account, which has about $519,000 and more than sufficient to pay the last 2 months' insurance and benefits. These are required by statute that we pay them, but unlike snow and ice,
No, you can get that.
unlike snow and ice, we shouldn't overdraw the accounts.
Okay.
We're just hoping to get it done before the middle of the month.
Which account is it coming out of?
Insurance and benefits. There's a little over 500,000 left in it, which will be more than sufficient to get us through the balance of the fiscal year.
Insurance.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just a quick question, Carter, if you might. On the ambulance receipts reserved expenses, those are zeroed out, and I was just curious, whatever happened with or how has it been registered for the $100,000 that we removed during the
So-
fall town meeting?
So you used to have the revenue account, and then you kind of kept that off book. And then when you approved a account, you swept money from that theoretically to a expenditure appropriation, okay? You don't have an independent expenditure appropriation anymore. So basically, because now we spend the money out of the fire department instead of spending it out of an ambulance account. So basically, what you have is the revenue account. It'll show you the balance at any given time. When we transferred the 100,000 out in the fall, if you could have seen the month before and the month after, you would have seen the balance on hand in the revenues dropping by that 100,000 from, I don't even wanna guess what the numbers were, from A to B.
So if I'm following you correct, just for my own terms here, basically, we're transferring all the money from the ambulance receipts reserved account to the, let's say, or the money gets transferred to the fire department.
It's transferred to the general fund as a revenue.
Okay, general fund is a revenue? Okay, which then we fund the
Which
fire
then
department,
funds
and then
the fire
the money comes out of fire, okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
I just was looking for
Whereas
the
before
trail,
you-
that's all.
Whereas before, you used to spend it directly out
Yep.
of that account.
That's what I was looking for, just the trail, that's, thank you.
Jeffrey?
Yes.
Now, if I remember right, the ambulance receipts, when we went to town meeting, it was promised to the voters that money would only be used for the ambulance receipts. So I really don't feel comfortable having it. I'd rather have it out there so people can see.
Well, when you were
Or
charging
at least a
directly
line
against it,
item.
and you had a few part-timers, and you didn't have any fringe benefit expenses, and you didn't have
Well, I understand all that, but I
these,
still want to see
That may have
it.
worked fine, but I'm pretty comfortable we can show people where their 250's going, that it's being spent on the ambulance service.
I think you missed the point. The point was that that's what people expect. That's what they voted for. So
I
to look at a budget to actual and see ambulance receipts all zeros, why can't you put in a category for that so that people will know what they have for money?
Well, for the same reason as I explained last year, once you went to career firefighters and you went to all the benefits, it's much easier from an accounting standpoint to simply make that transfer to the general fund.
I also believe, and this is one of those, it's one of those things where the article stated a purpose.
Yep.
The motion comes down to the fire chief can spend those funds on, I should look
I have
this
to
up.
check that out.
But it's worded
Hmm.
that
Gotta
it
watch
can be
those
spent
motions.
for the ambulance and fire department expenses. It's, again, it's one of those things where the article, the warning said this, but the motion on the floor
Okay, you gotta watch those motions.
specified this and this. That's why it's always important people pay attention to the motions and don't get caught up in the summaries and even the warrant article. Because the warrant article just lets you know, hey, we're gonna be, this is the
Kinda
subject.
sorta.
And the motion, it's like, changing a motion on town meeting floor.
Well, I will say, Mr. Chairman, that's no longer true. The motions used to be, the warrant article used to be something like, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds, borrow, beg, steal, to do X. And the warrant articles now are much more definitive, to the point where they're almost the motion.
But, I mean, at that time.
Yeah, well,
At that time, yeah, and-
That's, the
and- right.
the
A
little
article
game
said,
playing
and then the
there.
motion.
And we don't do that any longer.
And
Or
that
at
was
least
a,
we haven't the
that was a
3 town
discussion,
meetings
right,
I've been with you.
right. And that's what, one of the issues or questions or raised a lot of ruckus was the police station addition, where
Mm-hmm.
the article and the motion they weren't aligned together.
Okay.
At town meeting, will we have an accurate account of how much is in the ambulance receipts
Yes.
reserved? Okay, because right now we have 235, and I believe the
Yeah,
article
we're
was-
about 10, 15K short at this point. I'm pretty comfortable that we'll get that backfilled between now and town meeting. If not, we'll just figure out how to deal with it going into the town meeting. But we'll certainly let you know what's on hand as of that Friday.
Okay.
So, questions? The sewer retained earnings, that was certified.
Yes, that
in
was
the audit.
certified last fall.
Okay.
And on page, bear with me, on page 9 of your budget books, we gave you a breakdown of the amount that had been certified, what was used at the fall town meeting, what was proposed in this, but to be used and what would remain after the annual town meeting, if all of those anticipated appropriations pass muster. And the balance will be rolled into next year.
Okay. Where did that go?
Okay, so the sewer retained earnings has 391, 242? Or is that all?
Just bear with me.
Yeah. take your time.
There's quite a few pages here, and I don't have them all committed to memory. They would go into next year. Right now, there's 622, 897
Okay.
that remains after the fall town meeting. I don't believe the proposed operating budget changed. I'll double check that as we go through it here. We have proposed 100,000 into an operating reserve, assuming the meeting creates one, and 25,000 into an OPEB reserve. Then there's the warrant article for 70,000. So if all that goes forward as anticipated at the time we put the book together, there would be 391,242 going forward into next year.
In Article 18 and 19, those are put forward by the Board of Selectmen or by the sewer commissioners? Excuse me.
These are being put forward by the Board of Selectmen on behalf of the Sewer Commission with the concurrence of the Sewer
Thank you.
Commission.
Okay, so there's a vote of the sewer commissioners at a meeting that they put these articles
I
forward?
don't know. I worked with Tom Jelinowski and what they did down at their end. I don't know.
Well, I think before the Board of Selectmen put anything on the warrant, don't they make sure that they were voted appropriately by the departments?
No.
No?
No, sometimes we just get an email.
Okay. So there's an email trail that this came from the sewer department?
This
and
one
not the Board of
came out of a
Selectmen.
conversation, I believe, with myself. and
Came
Mr.
out of a
Jelinowski.
conversation. Okay. So I would have to go to the board, the sewer commissioners, to see what the vote was on these articles.
As you wish, whatever you want to do.
Okay, yes, that will happen. I've got lots of room. I don't, sorry, got too much stuff.
No, I was making them over there.
All right, it's
I tend to
It's
spread out
19
to fill the
hour,
space that's
7
available.
PM by that clock. So we'll open the pre-town.
I'll make a motion to open the pre-town meeting.
Second,
Motion made and seconded. Liz?
Yes.
Paul?
Yeah.
Bev?
Yes.
Julie?
yes.
Will?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
And yes. All right. We'll just go. Article 1. The fiscal 18 operating budget amendments.
Mr. Chairman, if I just could
Yes.
make a comment? I would really have preferred to end up seeing the motions for these articles. I'll be voting based upon the information that we've discussed and that we have presently on these articles.
I agree. How is it hot in here?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I might be able to put some people's mind at ease a little bit. First, you and I spoke, but I did not get my invitation to this until Thursday. I was able to respond to you yesterday. If you look at the warrant articles, they in fact
Thank you.
are virtually the motion. This is the beginning of the voter information guide. For all except, oh, my apologies, 3 of the articles, which I can speak to when we get to them. To see if the town will vote, simply, all you have to do is strike it and say, I move. And at the end, or to take any other reaction there too, that has to be struck. That's it, that's the motion. The warrant article is virtually a motion.
And
I will tell you that this is one of the 3 that may have a change by the town meeting. The reason for that is you may remember we'd already reduced the litigation from 17,250 to increase snow and ice. And I had mentioned that if we were able to reduce litigation needs further, we would do that at the town meeting and keep the bottom line the same, but increase snow and ice. Pending a court hearing, which I believe is scheduled for Friday, I do believe we may have reduced our exposure on one of the pieces of litigation that looked like it might really chew up some real dollars. So there's some potential there on that one.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask a
Yes.
question. The, under litigations,
Hmm?
that was unanticipated and not budgeted. Would it have been made sense that they can end up going to the emergency reserve?
No, sir, it does not, in my opinion. I know we disagree on this. I believe that the emergency fund, which is the only thing that can be transferred during the course of the year, should be shepherded as deep into the fiscal year as possible. I think I've made my position clear on that
Yep.
for the last 18 months now.
So the amounts on this are gonna change for snow and ice. I think we looked at the budget to actual yesterday, and it showed in excess of 75,000.
Yeah, I think we may be, close to 80,000 by the time we tally out the year. So my hope is that if I can reduce this litigation by the town meeting, even if it's only by, whatever it's by, 2,500 or whatever, then I can reduce the need to transfer funds between now and July 15 under the statutory authority that is shared by this body and the select board.
I think the other question that came up was around the treasurer collector on the tax bill templates. Could this have not been put on, I mean, it was put in the budget and not recommended. Could it have been put off till next year, or, it's just a little background as to why it's on this.
Yeah, I mean, it could possibly have been put into next year. The problem is I would have had to have cut $7,000 someplace else in order to accommodate it because of the cap. So the thought was to get that done and to have that ready to go. Because during the course of this year, the company discovered that it had not been billing the town correctly. It has only been billing you for postage.
that's what that was.
So that is why going from 3 mailings a year, currently the first mailing is your estimated, and it has 2 coupons. Then you do a third mailing with 1 coupon. Then you do a fourth mailing with 1 coupon. If we can get down to 2 mailings with 2 coupons each, we can, we think, absorb the actual printing costs that are now gonna be coming our way. So getting the template done as early as possible, and it might not get done this fiscal year, but we'll sign the purchase order so we can encumber the money and carry it over, is very important to being able to stick to our budget for fiscal 19. once those extra costs hit our accounts.
I had a question about the treasurer collector. Are we still keeping a quarterly cycle?
Yes,
Okay.
you mail them out twice a year, but there's 2 coupons
Right,
attached.
I understand that, but I just wanted to make sure
Oh, yes, we're
that
not,
it
we're
was-
not, we're not going back to semi-annual, we're not
Okay.
going back to annual.
All right.
We're not doing any
That
of
wasn't
those
clear.
things.
Right, because that would affect cash
That
flow
would, that affects
tremendously.
cash flow dramatically.
Yeah, so I just wanted to
Yep.
straighten that out. The other question.
And we'll put an insert with that December bill to explain to people, please note, you're gonna see 2 coupons this year as opposed to just the one.
One, yeah. My other question was under development services. It says 750 for right to farm signage, and we looked in the backup material, and we couldn't find what this 750 buys. What does it buy?
So it's about 320 for the signs themselves. That is an old estimate, I'm hoping that that will hold true. It's about $125 for the, you have a special a post base that goes in the ground.
Special.
Then you have a special post, they're called a breakaway, they're designed so that when a car hits them,
They just pop over.
they just pop over and they snap. Those are about 125, 8's about 1,000, or, yeah, about 1,000. So we're right around 1,300, and I made a decision that somehow, somewhere, we would find the $500 to close it out as opposed to asking for $1,250.
Okay. No wonder we couldn't.
That's,
Yeah, no, there's no way that was making any sense.
well, that's why we, you know,
I mean, I could have asked for the $1,250, but I just,
You also could have bought a regular pole and stuck it in the ground, and if somebody happens to run it over.
safety, safety, safety.
the wrong pole, if somebody
Yeah, but
happens
there's,
to run it over.
there's signs all over town that don't have special poles.
Well, on my watch, we're going to
And if
put
you-
in the ones that meet the standards, because you
Otherwise, the town
don't
is
want
not.
the cost of a lawsuit because you didn't use the appropriately rated.
Yeah, maybe we should change them all.
You leave old work alone, and new work you change to correction and.
So you better not hit an old
So, yeah.
pole, that's all, Bennett.
We can only-
If they're old and they predate the standard, you're probably okay, but if you start, you need to install
Okay.
new ones that meet today's standards.
Okay.
Anything else on one? All right.
You need a
Article-
motion, Mr. Chairman.
Are we gonna make recommendations, or are we gonna just go through the articles and
Well,
then?
I think we should probably, on some of these, we should make recommendations.
Are we doing that next week, or are we doing?
We thought we were gonna do that on, put our report together on Wednesday.
Yeah,
Right.
let's do that.
And get Carter, get all our questions answered on these articles, and then
Like,
move along.
okay.
Article 2 is the consent agenda. The reports of town officers, reports of committees, and the spending limits of the revolving funds.
Town reports did come in today, they should be available once we get them uncrated in the next day or two, and we'll try to have it up on the web by Monday and have some for the town web.
It's already on the web.
Did she get it up already
Yeah.
today? Okay.
Yeah.
Should probably take down the benefit for Mark Casper. It's on the web. That was, how many years ago?
I don't know. All right.
All right, any issues with this one?
No.
All right, I didn't think so. Article 3 is to amend the bylaws for the departmental revolving funds. I believe one thing that raised discussion was, it has Director of Community Services. do we, that position, does that position yet exist, or?
It does not.
Okay.
It is page 314 of your books. You'll find, I believe it's perhaps tab 8. You will find the order creating the office and the job description. It will be created as we get closer to town meeting or just after town meeting.
Excuse me, Carter, what page
Probably
was
just
that again?
before. Tab 8, the orders or the resolution, I think you would call it here, is on page 314.
314.
It's about 2 pages long. And then the job description, it starts on page 316. And that's about 3 pages long or so. So that'll be created just before town meeting on May 14. If there's any, we picked up one thing, and when we were doing a final review, we need to add historical commission to it. But if there's any questions about it between now and next Wednesday, by all means, if you see something, give me a shout so I can attend to it.
Okay. Anything else, anyone else have anything on 3? I just remember that was a discussion there.
Yep.
About the, whether that position existed.
There were, I'm told that there were 2 questions that came out of one of your meeting. One was why a bylaw. I can speak to bylaws in general on some others, but the Muni Mod Act requires the creation of revolving funds now be done by bylaws. If you remember, you used to annually, you have this list of everything you have to do. So now you create the fund by bylaw. That's what we're doing in 3. And then next year, if you'll see section C above, you would see the amount set for it there. I'm told you also asked what the cap is on revolving funds. There is no cap on revolving funds. That was abolished by the Muni Mod Act. And some of these, Jeff, I only made 1 copy. You can circulate them or whatever folks want.
So no cap on revolving funds
No,
anymore?
Not as of, I think, November of
16. Yeah,
Those were abolished.
that's why I keep trying to read that thing, and one of these days I gotta sit down and do it.
Well, it's several hundred pages, and you really, if you Google Muni Mod, DLR, DLS, there's a booklet out there that really kind of cuts through all of the chaff, and I think you would find it a much easier go than trying to read the legislation itself.
I have a question about how money is expended out of revolving funds. The money that we put in is from the tax base, correct? No?
No.
Where's-
It depends upon what can go in there, so I don't have the bylaws for the 4 above, but so, for instance, the burial and improvement fund, if we have a burial on a weekend, we get paid for that, separate and distinct. So the burial from the permit fees from the weekend go in there.
Okay.
Then it spells out what we can spend it for. So on the recycling fund, the only monies that go in there are what Lori, they actually collect on those bulky waste days.
Okay.
So you'll see that if you get a chance to go back and look at the main bylaws, you'll see it set up with the fund name,
Mhm.
what it can be used for, and then the receipts that you have to put in there.
Okay.
Okay. I haven't seen any towns, legally, I suppose you could seed it initially so that it wasn't negative, because it's never supposed to be negative.
Okay.
So some communities may have, I haven't seen it done, I've just heard about it. Put a little something in there to get them started.
So this creates the cap, the total amount that can remain in that
Those,
revolving fund.
those are fund by fund, yes, town meeting has to set that cap.
All right.
It all stays in there forever until the fund is abolished, or there's a separate vote to move something out.
Okay.
This sets how much they can spend annually,
All right.
okay? So if, for instance, Lori has a very busy, bulky waste, she collects 15,000, she can only spend 10,000. There are circumstances under which she can come to this body and the select board to get that raised during the course of the year.
Yes.
Okay. But that 5,000 stays with the revolving fund, or where does that go?
It stays there unless there's a separate town vote to vote some of it out, or if there's a year in which you amend the bylaws to eliminate that.
Okay,
Whatever's left on June 30th of that year rolls into the general fund.
okay,
So it don't stay with the fund,
right. It's zeroed out.
and that's kind of weird.
Any other on 3? All right, next one would be Article 4, bylaw amending the advisory committee.
I have a question.
Anybody have any questions on that?
I do, Mr. Chairman. My first question would be, or my question would be on section 2.
Yes?
And I've mentioned this before, I believe at the meeting, and was, well, we went through it at the meeting, but, I'm just wondering what the rationale for using the term shall. Under, provided however, that in the event of the failure to appoint a successor, members shall serve until the successor is appointed or duly qualified.
Sure.
And the reason that I ask is because it seems like, I mean, we have volunteer committees throughout. People have to go out of their way to volunteer, to participate, and now it seems as though when their appointments are done, they're not, unless they resign.
So
And
there's-
that's an act that they're, it's creating something that they're required to do to leave. It just
So
doesn't
let
seem
let
right.
me, let me tell you why this is
Sure.
here and why that term of art is used, okay?
Yeah.
There's a concept of holdover. When someone's position is not filled, the person who's in it is essentially a holdover, and they can serve until somebody's appointed to replace them. There are many communities that don't recognize that, and it becomes a point of contention throughout the course of a year when, well, their term expired, why are they still there? And you end up with this squabble about, well, here's the concept of holdover, here's how it works, here's why it is. So rather than having that squabble, and all due respect, this can be a squabblesome town,
Sure.
the thought was to make it very clear on the holdover in there. And so that is essentially the way most holdover statutes are written.
Okay, because
So yes, they would, if for some reason they aren't reappointed and there's no replacement appointed and they just don't want to do it, they have a couple options. They can simply not show up, or they can formally resign, and then they're done.
right, and that's, I guess, the reason why I'm asking, because I think if we were to use the term may, it would have allowed them to continue, it wouldn't have required them to resign, and it still would have satisfied the holdover, but it wouldn't have kept the committee appearing to be full after
So
that
let me-
member
let me-
has no
let me
longer
do-
started to show
Let me do
up.
this. May is a permissive term.
Yeah.
Okay? And so I will run that by town council, may at their election, I don't know. Who's gonna be the one making the decision
The
of whether or
person
not they
that's-
may doing something? So let me run that, if that's of concern to the body. We've had this book out here for 10 weeks.
Mhm.
It's unfortunate we're getting the question tonight.
Well,
But
I did
that's-
mention it
that's
before,
what-
too.
So, let me get that question to town council and see what I can do with it between now and the town meeting.
Another thing
You did
is,
ask that at the, yesterday at the meeting. I just
Oh, yeah.
watched this meeting on video.
Yeah, no, I
Sorry,
did,
then I missed it, Bob.
yeah.
Jeffrey, can I say something?
Yes.
I have a card in my pocketbook that says I am done after town meeting. My appointment's up. So you would have to get reappointed if you chose to stay till they get a replacement for you?
That's why we wanted to clarify and make very clear the concept of holdover, because the general understanding is that with limited exception, appointments to committees like this, you can continue to serve.
Mhm.
So, I will
That
double check
concept
on
is
that.
something new to me, because
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
I had a question why the Board of Selectmen submitted this article about the advisory committee.
Because it felt that these changes were in the best interest of the community.
Okay, but they never came before the advisory committee to suggest these changes to us?
Well, unfortunately, the relationship is not a good working one. I hope
don't
we
have a
improved
problem,
on
do
that
you?
throughout the budget process, and I hope we continue to work on that.
Okay.
I mean, that would have been simple, to come in and throw it out and say, well, what do you think? You know? It goes two ways.
Right. The other question that I had is, the way this printed out,
Hmm?
under section 4A, it looks like the A is crossed out.
It is, the
I'm just-
intent,
And to make a section 5 and cross the
To-
4 out?
yeah, instead of having a four and a four, to just simply have sections 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Also, the order of them was kind of out of sync because it had, it being the duty of the committee to do certain things before it was the duty of the selectmen to even give them the warrant to act upon those things. So that was reordered just kind of for the way things flow.
This other, it's just a comment
It
on.
does expand the role of the advisory committee with respect to commenting on all of the petition articles. That is something of note, I think.
In changing some of this wording, if you look at substantial amount of communities per se, the advisory committee generally ends up being the one to present their budget to the community. That's stated in the Association and Town Finance Handbook and and if you look at a number of communities, you'll end up seeing that particular statement in their bylaws. And this is quite a few of them. I've looked at that as to why it's being changed from the.
Well, it's really all over the map, Mr. Spring. I don't think you can say that a majority of communities do X because they don't. In many cases, the finance committee or the advisory committee presents. In some cases, it's the town administrator. In some, it's the town manager. In some cases, the advisory committee can't even present. If you look at the Charter and Webster, can't even present till after the town administrator's presented. So each community picks what is appropriate to it. And I think that certainly one of the most important things here is trying to clean up the conflict between when the article which gave the town administrator the authority to create the budget, that was done, but there was no superiority or superseding clause in it. So it left, unfortunately, the conflict here. And this change will clarify that.
This brings me to a different point for all of these bylaw articles that come up, Articles 3 through 8. We are in the third year of a codification process, and the town has spent, what, close to $3,000 each year?
It's 10,000 over the course of the
Right.
3 years, yes.
So my question is, why are the selectmen bringing forth articles, bylaws, to a town meeting? Last year, I believe the advisory committee brought articles forward as bylaw changes and were rejected by the Board of Selectmen because we're going through the codification process. We are still going through the codification process, so why are the selectmen bringing forth articles to change bylaws?
Well, I'm
at
not
this
really
point
very
in time?
political, but in the fall of 2016, I think that the selectmen's response was a deep visceral reaction to the lack of a good working relationship between them and this body, and that was the quickest thing they could catch on, to say no. Now, you can't shut down the business of a town for 3 years while you go through codification. And one of the reasons we did stretch it out over 3 years is because frankly, you didn't have the $10,000 to tackle it all in year one. And some of these are driven for instance, Article 3, the statute requires it. The only way you can have, which is why last fall, we had the warrant article to amend that bylaw to create those revolving funds. So some are driven by statute, some are driven by a perceived need, some are driven by trying to bring one of your bylaws, and I can speak to that when we get to Article 6, into compliance with a letter from the Attorney General's office going back to 2015, in
So-
which your bylaw did not pass muster with them.
Can I say something, Jeff?
Is it concerning this,
Yeah,
the bylaw?
yeah.
Okay.
I lost my train of thought. So if these people are working on this process, what are we gonna do? Walk in and hand them a bunch of changes and say, oh, by the way, we decided to make these changes?
Yep, that's exactly what you do.
Yeah, and what are they gonna say? Oh, we're gonna charge you more money.
Yeah, they might.
Yeah,
Or-
well, where's it coming from? That doesn't make any sense.
Or
We don't
we-
have money to throw away.
Or, in the fiscal 19 budget, you will see that there's the balance of the codification in there. And then they'll have to be paid for either out of the legal budget, or they will be, wait till they go into the budget, the book, they'll be held out separate. And let me just check one other thing, if I might, please.
Doesn't make any sense to make a change in the middle of the river.
You can't stop the
No, you
legislative
can't stop,
process
but
for
there's
3 years.
unnecessary changes. It's just mean-spirited, in my opinion. And that's the bottom
I would
line.
have to respectfully disagree.
No, go ahead.
I will.
At the Association of Town Finance, because I asked this particular question because of the conflict in the bylaws, and we had gotten town council to weigh in and said there was a conflict, and it should be worked between the two boards, which we asked a couple of times, and it didn't work that way, per se. I asked from the law office of the AG, if they reviewed other bylaws for conflicts, and the answer was no, and I ended up indicating to them that there was a conflict, and they indicated that the town should have gone, once they knew there was a conflict, they should have gone back to the AG to settle that out. And I got the impression, I can't say that the person said this, I got the impression that the older bylaw would be the standing one versus the newer one.
As a general rule, the newer bylaw or statute is the standing one. And I think that if that had come down to it, one could have easily put forth a position paper that took the position that there was no conflict. And be happy to chat with you about offline, but that could very easily have been dealt with, I think.
Well, we had received an email from the town council at that particular time, said that there was a conflict between the two.
Right, and
And
I thought you just mentioned that this was submitted by the Board of Selectmen to
is.
deal with that conflict.
It is.
But then you just said there wasn't a conflict.
I believe that if I had been tasked with writing a position paper on whether or not there was a conflict between the two, I could have easily taken the position that there was not a conflict, and I believe that that would have passed muster with legal review. That was not done. I wasn't here. I leave that to you. But there are concerns that there is a conflict, and certainly it would be nice to get this cleaned up once and for all. The problem that happened is they attempted to amend the advisory committee's bylaw to give an authority to the town administrator. Somebody realized at the last minute that might not have been the best thing to do, so they tried to amend another section. If they had simply added about 8 words, and this section shall supersede all prior bylaws, it would have been done. That's one of the problems of trying to do things on the fly on the town meeting floor.
With regards to codification, and I think this was asked at one of the meetings when the town clerk was there, but I can't recall. When is that process, is there a date?
We have
estimate?
their first draft. We were in the process of trying to do budget, trying to get ready for town meeting, and also our other law firm was, for the most part, dissolving. There were some other issues going on, but I think you may be aware that that firm really splintered into 3 or something.
I think 3, for sure.
So we made a decision that we would wait to get through town meeting, and then the town clerk and new town council and I would sit with that book and the CD to go through it together. So we fully expect to present the codification at the fall town meeting of 2017, excuse
The
me,
18th.
2018, missing a year there. And we are trying to do that somewhere, October 20 plus or minus.
So then it's my understanding that the selectmen asked you to look at the advisory bylaw in general and make recommendations to make these changes, which you then presented to them after some level of looking at them.
I don't remember the exact order. They had a bylaw that they had been floating around last fall that I think was not the best result for everybody. Had some concerns about it, so yeah, I did tackle the rewrite as part of the package I put forward.
So you did rewrite them for them to review, for their review?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
the
That's-
whole
that's-
package.
Yeah, okay, that's what I'm asking.
It's all my draft.
Okay.
They may say do this or do that, but it's all my draft.
Right, they asked you
based upon
to,
requests.
they asked you to look at this, and this is your draft?
I can't recall if they specifically said, please include a redraft of the
Okay.
advisory bylaw.
Liz?
Yeah, I'm just, to follow on to some of the other questions, is, so we've contracted with a company to go through and review everything.
Mhm.
And in the middle of it, some things we have to do because of running the town's business. I don't see how this particular one really makes that change and why it can't wait. There's some that can wait and some that can't. And I'm hearing, maybe incorrectly, but I'm hearing 2 different things each time. So I'm not sure which thing I should be listening to, because I'm hearing you say we wanted to wait, and I'm hearing you say, well, we didn't want to wait because, running a town business, but they've done a review, but we wanted to hold off on the review of that review until after the town meeting. So I'm really confused.
The way you put the question, frankly. I don't
Okay,
know.
all right, let me try it again. I'll be
Yeah,
very,
please.
okay. So I'm hearing you say 2 different things, and it's confusing, number one, okay? The 2 different things I'm hearing is there are things for article changes, for bylaw changes that are necessary because of code changes.
Driven
at
by
the-
statute, yeah.
Right, all right.
That's acceptable.
Fully get those,
Yep.
right? But the rest, I don't understand why we're doing it now as opposed to waiting until we get the formal review from the company that we contracted and spent money on. So,
On this particular one, given the push last fall to revise the advisory committee bylaw, I frankly thought it best to take a crack myself at a rewrite that I thought would address some of the concerns from that push and would address a continuing concern about a conflict between the current advisory committee bylaw and the bylaw that gave the authority to draft the budget to the town administrator.
and what did the codification company say about the current version of the bylaw?
They didn't opine on it at all that I recall.
So I guess that's my point, is that we're paying somebody to advise us, and we're not taking their advice. And I just question that logic in doing it now. And that's really, it's a difference of opinion, but I question doing that. We're paying them
Why pay them to advise and then ignore the advice?
Well, I believe that it is advisable to clean up the conflict that I've had to discuss and debate for 18-plus months now. I think it would be in everybody's interest to put that behind us, and I thought it was best to put forward a revision that would lay to bed the one that had been floating around last fall.
I,
I didn't want that bloody thing coming back in the form it was in.
I can understand that. What I can't understand is why, if came from you, why you didn't come before the advisory committee and have discussion about it before it was submitted as an article for the selectmen to approve and put on the warrant. That's,
There are things that
You
you
know.
don't know. For years, they had a larger group for an advisory board. And at home, I have to dig it out. I went back and looked over the years at the changes the board had to make because they couldn't get people to work on the advisory board.
so,
That
So
has-
whatever, I just don't agree with this at all. And I think it's stupid because we are paying these people to change horses in the middle of the race. Beyond me.
All right, on that one.
Okay, so we'll kill that one at town meeting.
We disagree on. Any other questions? All right, Article 5, I know this is one that is gonna remove a number that, because we don't have we don't have 4 precincts any longer. I believe we only have 2.
That's, actually you have 3, I believe, don't you?
no, three.
Is it 3 still?
yeah, there's
C.
A, B, and C.
Yeah.
C?
And so this was an attempt to clean up the conflict and to do it in a way that was flexible. If you have 2, this works. If you have 4, this works. It doesn't matter how many precincts you have. To the extent you can draft bylaws that fit a standard, you don't have to use specific numbers, you can avoid problems down the line.
So the way it was written before, it was supposed to be even between the precincts? So now it just
Well,
depends on who applies, and if there's an open one, you grab it?
I mean, this is many, many
No, I know.
years old.
I know that.
And it doesn't say to be evenly apportioned.
Okay,
It says,
all right.
It just says to be
All right,
apportioned.
Just curious.
Truthfully, you could have 1 in 3 and 18 in 1.
Yep, okay.
Right.
Just a question.
That would become where the lawyers would start quibbling of what does apportion mean. So I didn't try to change that part. I was just trying to clarify the number of precincts.
The one question that came up is not to exceed 21. Do we know how many we presently have?
You actually, I believe, and please, this is 2. I'm gonna tell you 10 plus or minus. You don't have 21.
Because we thought that was kind of high as a number for a second.
Again, I didn't try to go back on the history. This is 25 plus years old.
Yeah. Now,
Okay.
do we have the results, do you have the results from the codification process? Did they change this?
I don't know.
Okay, so you have the disc, you haven't met with the town clerk to go over it
Yeah.
yet, so you don't know if this is something that's been
I
addressed?
have my copy of the book. That's all I have at this point.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that just does not make sense to me. Logical sense that you would make changes to something without reviewing what the recommendations that we've paid for. And I realize I'm going back to that same subject, but Carter, I just don't understand the logic. Help me
There
here.
isn't any.
Well, I think the logic to me is I only have so many hours. I don't need to look at that to know this is a problem and fix it quickly.
Yeah, but if what you do isn't right, then we'll have to do it again.
Or if they have other changes to it, that then has to go back and we're wasting
There's
the
nothing
state's
here
time to go
that
back.
wouldn't be right.
You don't know. You didn't look at what they gave you. How
I
do you
don't
know?
need to.
All right,
All right,
well,
whatever.
what brought this to the surface? Was there pending litigation? I don't understand why you would choose this particular, out of all the bylaws we have that are outdated and poorly written, why this rose
to the
to the
surface.
occasion right now.
We
know.
had someone who had made an application for, I believe, a Class 3, and they went to look at the bylaws to see, and in looking through the bylaw sections very quickly, they happened to notice this and brought it to my attention.
So what?
Okay. All right.
Definitely. Okay, Jeffrey, rolling right along.
Chairman, can we move on to the next one, please?
Yeah.
All right, is that it on 5?
Oh, yeah.
All right, Article 6.
Article 6 is driven by, you received comments in this town on August 18 of 2015, advising you that the bylaw you adopted with respect to the Veterans Oversight Board had substantial flaws and conflicts. Given the need, this is a board that has been meeting, has been ongoing, frankly, does not meet the test whatsoever that were of concern to the Attorney General. It was a need to get this fixed as quickly as possible so that they could continue in business. The French bylaw can wait, but the Veterans Oversight Board is one that we felt really needed to be addressed.
When do they meet?
Oh, they meet monthly.
I think, third Tuesday at the
At the
Legion?
Legion.
at the American Legion. You go in the
Okay.
bottom door through the hall,
Yeah.
They have a
towards
back
the
room.
stairs,
Yeah.
there's a room to the right.
So this rewrite was designed to address those concerns of the Attorney General.
Is this a board or a committee?
The statutory term is a board.
They keep minutes and the whole 9 yards? Because I know some of our committees aren't doing that.
I don't know, I don't go on the web and check.
Well, that should be a requirement.
Then I would look forward to this body's minutes being posted on the web as well.
I thought we did that.
See,
No, we don't.
No? Oh,
No.
we should then.
I thought we were changing companies. Are we changing hosting companies for the town
We
website?
are.
Okay, so, yeah.
all right, so,
However, we're not changing that section.
Oh.
The intent is to keep my town government for all of the minutes.
Okay,
That's kind of a second service that you've used. It's an open public domain. And we're going to try to keep them because the town clerk likes it. Many of the committees do. We have to figure out how to marry the new web hosting with this one and how to merge all the archived stuff with this one. Because if you click on minutes and agendas, it really gets kind of messy to figure out where stuff is. But we absolutely have to address that.
right. I would need training on that, because I think I volunteer to do stuff like that.
The first task really will be the redesign, because the new web format is it's all driven by mobile device format, whereas this one is an older PC-based. So I think we're gonna spend the first 4 to 6 months just out there looking around at what looks nice, how do we like it, and doing some templates before we actually convert anything.
Well, I didn't want to put a bunch of stuff up there and then have to,
Feel free to put the minutes up there,
all right.
because that is not moving.
Who
Well-
fills the vacancies for this group?
For the Veterans Oversight, that is the select board.
any other questions on that bylaw?
One, just in one in general, for the appointment for the selectmen on any boards or committees, do they end up doing any background checks as far as queries? I know this was mentioned at one time, and I don't know where we are, just asking.
The only The short answer is no. I suppose on some of our volunteers, I'd have to look at the statute, who might have exposure to, I have to remember if this state has an elderly statute. They certainly do with respect to youth. There may be some that perhaps we should subject that to. Where did I start taking my notes of the night? I'll follow up on that, because you may be right. There may be some that we should, I'm thinking Council on Aging, Recreation, as
Even this one here?
potentially. This body, no.
In conservation?
No.
No? Well, they touch with the public.
Elderly and youth are essentially required by statute.
I'm saying anybody that really deals with the public on a possible day-to-day or into, going to somebody's residence or whatever that they deal with it, that's why I
And
asked.
I would leave to the select board doing some of this vetting, because we're concerned whether or not asking somebody to submit a resignation at the end of a term, if they really don't want to be a holdover, might be a hindrance to volunteering to serving. I would be concerned that telling every volunteer we're gonna submit into a Cory might be a hindrance as well. I think we have to balance that out. I certainly, with respect to the youth and the elders, I think you may have a point, and I'll follow up on that.
Yeah, there's certain ones I would think that
Yeah.
it would be prudent to do that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
in the interest of time, we've spent the 26th and then last night going through all of these articles and coming up with a list of questions, if we had any. And there were quite a few that we did not have any questions for the
Have my
town administrator. So I'm just wondering, are we intending to go back through and every single one of these articles? Or are we gonna go through the prep, or, follow the prep work that we've already done on this?
Some had really no questions, and some had a couple.
Right, and we've got that in the meeting minutes, which ones there were no questions.
Yep.
There's
We did talk about Article 9 a little bit.
So,
Well, let me just, if I might, try to kind of do a hybrid here. Article 7, that is being, change being proposed, that is being driven by the Muni Mod Act, and I've prepared a copy of that legislation. Article 8, I want to speak to the most important piece of this. There are some ancillary benefits to moving it. The primary intent here, we have an election coming up on the 7th of May. Town meeting will be on the 19th. Kind of late by the time May 19 rolls around to talk about all the whys and wherefores of the articles on the ballot that have already been voted. So the primary driving force behind this is to have the town meeting first, such that we can have the articles, have that discussion, have that debate, and have that as one more means of communicating with the public. Because we had, by my count, good golly, 11 meetings, 7 between the select board and the advisory committee, 4 at the Narragansett Regional School, and now 2 one-on-ones here. And we had virtually no one at any of them except for one meeting. So there's some ancillary benefits about this and that, but the primary drive is to be able to have that forum to get that added focus on the article.
The way it's been,
excuse me,
I just want to make a comment.
so, 7. Are there any questions on 7? I don't think there was.
There was no question on that one.
And Article 8, the changing of the election and town meeting. I think our biggest thing there was, and it's just a go-round, and you can go around probably all night, was why do it? And I think from the selectmen's point of view, it was made that when they present a budget to town meeting, all of the people who voted or brought that budget forward would be on the stage to stand up for it, for lack of a better word.
To speak to their reasoning, yes.
And it doesn't matter, when the election comes around, you're gonna have a person or two people, you know, they're gonna be, you live with a budget that's already put in place. And whether the election is before or after the town meeting, you still have that situation. But like I said, when I was at the meeting, the selectmen's perspective, their reasoning for doing this, one of them was for that purpose. You still have an individual or individuals, one or two, who's gonna serve that first year with a budget that, you know, was voted on, and that's, because you're not on the Board of Selectmen, that's just the way that rolls. But that was their reasoning for, one of the reasons for changing this was, when they go to town meeting, they can, all the people that voted for or put this forward can stand up there and make their case.
I know we talked about those, but we had one other question. Is this in sync with our, the other community? Because the election, if they're out of sync.
It is not. Your other partner community has not indicated any great interest in discussing the matter. And at some point, you are 84% of the district, and you may have to decide what is in the best interest of your community. The district agreement calls for the election to be on a Monday. They can hold an election if they'd like.
I know there was some level of discussion. I didn't know if they were in sync with us or if they were moving forward with that. That was really my
Did
question.
keep it in May to try to address some concerns that they have.
Right.
There were three basic reasons. One, communication with the public. We think that's critical. We had one night where you couldn't hear an echo in the room. Were there enough people filling the chairs? One out of these, 8, 9 meetings that we had. Second, I think Ms. Toth brought up the other night, if you're elected moderator on day one and you gotta run a town meeting, that's fine if you got a town moderator coming back year after year after year. But there can be quite a bit to it. So that was the second, and then the third was to have the people who drafted the warrant, drafted the budget, on stage to defend it. Those were sort of a descending import. I think frankly, the third one sort of the least. I really believe they're in that order. Communication with the constituency and the community. A chance for a moderator to elect them in an election, and then he can run the fall town meeting, or she can run the fall town meeting. Have a chance to get themselves into it. And then the third issue. This may be something where the community has to decide if it's important, and it may have to take a vote that sets itself apart from its partner.
All right, we all set on that one? Article 9, and this article appeared at the fall special town meeting, and I believe John did say on the floor that they would bring this back, and they have. I believe there was a question of the property tax status of this.
So two things. This had been charitable, and then portions, they did not file their application on time. So they did get a tax bill. They did appeal that to the appellate tax board. That hearing was supposed to be sometime last week. We have retained special counsel on this. The hearing probably won't be until May, so this could be out there a year before it's decided. Second item of note, I do want to make you be aware of, there's a minor change from the fall. It's to acquire by purchase, gift, or eminent domain, and the use of eminent domain here is primarily for title problems. Occasionally, there are title problems with property, and eminent domain is one way to cure those defaults. It's not intended to take the parcel, and I would let Mr. Henshaw speak to this at length.
All right.
It's here at his request.
Is there, oh, I'm sorry.
I
Yes,
think
sir.
there was another question, if my memory, or it came up at some particular point, that a couple of these articles would come under the Wetlands Act and may not necessarily behoove the town to take and end up acquiring them and paying money, since they would end up falling under the auspice of the Conservation Commission anyway.
Well, I will leave to the town the merits of this acquisition of this land.
Pardon me?
I will leave to the town the merits of this acquisition.
Yeah, that's something that'll be, I think
Discussed.
that was spoke to at town meeting floor
Mhm.
the first time by at least one individual.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mr. Chase.
The other question I had, which isn't a money article, I realize you're just putting this forward for the Preservation Committee, was the responsibility for ownership of the road, because the parcels go on either side of the road. And does that create a liability for the town to maintain and,
I don't believe so. If the road was wholly within the parcel, then, and it was part of the land in the deed, then yes. But they're simply acquiring the land, not the roadway.
All right. Anything else on that one? I thought there was just a couple of small things. Article 10, accept Lafayette Road as a public way.
It was
Everything,
just-
um,
is the road up to code?
That was the
Yes,
only
this was
question.
forwarded by the planning board, that we had the report of their inspecting engineer. They did provide the survey plans. Town council, they did provide all their title work, which town council has reviewed. He is awaiting the final deed, which he expects to have this week, and to be able to have it reviewed by the end of next week, such that if there are any problems, they can be fixed. I would like to see the problems fixed before the town meeting vote, not after the town meeting vote, because then something happens, the selectmen sign something, perhaps they shouldn't have, and the next thing you know, you end up owning something that perhaps you didn't want to. So my drive has been to get all this paperwork done before the vote is taken, so I can assure the town meeting that it's been fully vetted.
I think the only concern that I remember hearing is that, on this particular one, is that it was up to code. We have accepted, one other road just recently here, and there's already, the road is, and it was, at that time, it said that it was up to code, and now it's deteriorating per se.
We have the engineering reports, we have everything that I think we need, and this one looks good. I don't have all the history of it, but this one looks like it was done from the get-go appropriately.
Okay. All right. Nothing further on 10? 11 is the scholarship fund. And there's no issue with this with a standalone article this year. Article 12 is the property valuation account.
There's no question on that one.
22.5 for the Board of Assessors for their work. That's it. Article 13 is the funding of the CPC, the Community Preservation.
Mr. Chairman, the question on that one was, what is the current balance?
Yes.
I'll have to get you that, I'm sorry, I don't know that off the top of my head. Be happy to get it to you.
I think that was the only thing
Yeah,
that came up with that
I'll
one.
get you those before your meeting next week.
Article 14, expending of community preservation reserves.
Mr. Chairman, according to the minutes, there were no questions on Article 14.
It was, yeah, I thought community preservation, the only thing was, what was the balance of the fund?
My understanding is that there was a question as to how I got the $15,000 on the Baldwinville School. Here's the breakdown that was presented.
Yes,
to
when
the
their
CPC.
committee wasn't
They
created
had
to,
some questions as to whether or not some of the items were fundable, so, but they did go along with the 15,000, subject to eligibility, which would be determined at the time we go to make an expense. Title search, if they don't feel that's fundable, we will do it through town council. Some of the things, we'll just figure it out as we go along. My hope is that at the annual town meeting of next year, we in fact, hopefully, possibly, please light a candle, say a novena, have someone that's interested in acquiring the building so we can dispose of it.
Just as an add-on question, I understand that the letters were sent out to the abutters of that building
Yes.
to get on. Because a friend of mine, his son is in a butter, and I didn't hear whether they had received it or not.
It was mailed to the property tax, we use the property tax maps. So, if his son is interested, by all means, have him call our office. We'd love to have an area resident on there to help shape the future of that property.
I did just tell this individual it would be in their best interest, since it was abutting to them, that they would end up.
Yeah, we're very hopeful of having a good community process.
Are we getting any volunteers?
We're getting our normal rush of applications.
Thank you, thank you. Right, thinning them out as you go.
I
Stacking up on the
constantly
desk.
remain hopeful.
Yeah.
I constantly remain hopeful. I mean, we do everything we can.
That's good.
stacking up on the desk.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a
Piling
chore
high,
to pick.
piling high.
All right. Yeah, okay, so I'll make copies of all of these handouts for our next meeting. Where was it at? 14, okay. Article 15, Cable Department Operating Budget.
Mr. Chairman, according to the minutes, there were no questions on this article.
This was,
Yeah, we just had to find it, we did.
right, we found it in the book. Along with Article
Sewer
16,
department.
the sewer department, that budget was, and myself and Barbara, we were at that meeting discussing that
We
budget.
take it that 15 actually had enough revenue to take it end up for their budget, since it's not part of the town budget.
Revenue should be about 125,000.
That's what we're assuming.
I'd like to see it build up.
Article 17 is the deferred maintenance of the sewer department.
Mr. Chairman, the question I had listed in the minutes was, has the sewer fund been certified?
And
Yes,
it
last fall,
has.
that's that page 9 in your budget book.
Yes.
And I think that perhaps includes the date it was certified.
And it's also mentioned in the audit. I seem to remember, I think it's in there. One of them,
And I think we printed
Financials.
out extra copies for you in the box over there.
yes, I got them, Holly emailed me, I got them our last meeting,
Okay.
so. All right, Article 18 is the establishment of a stabilization fund within the sewer fund. And Article 19 deals with the deposits to reserve funds by that. And a question that was raised on both of those articles was with regards to the enterprise funds, Mass General Law 44, Section 53F and 1/2. If there, is there a conflict by creating a stabilization fund?
The town council did not feel there was when he reviewed and vetted the proposal. The only change that he made when I sent him the draft was 18 and 19 were originally conjoined. He broke them apart to first establish the fund and to then deposit. He thought that that was the best thing to do from a legal perspective. Also, because the deposit only requires a majority vote. So that's why he split those apart.
I do have one other question about these two articles, 18 and 19. It says they were submitted by the Board of Selectmen for the sewer commissioners. Again, does this come from the sewer commissioners, or does this come
These were
from the Board of
our
Selectmen?
recommendations for the sewer fund as I worked my way through the budgetary process with Tom Jelinowski. And
Okay,
he's the one who'd been kind of appointed by the sewer department to be their front person.
all right. So I should ask Mr. Jelinowski
Sure.
if the sewer commissioners have voted on these articles.
Anything else?
No.
Article 20, it sets the salaries of elected town officials. During discussion of this, where it says Board of Selectmen and all others, I myself got a chuckle out of that, but does it concern the Light and Water Commissioners?
I have decided from day one that I'm not, until the general fund is at least settled and acting appropriately, going to wade into the muddy waters of how this town has structured its light and water system. So my response to you would be that they operate under a separate statute, there's their position, and I'm gonna stick by it for now.
Yeah, so the only understanding that we were trying to get clear is it says elected officials, and their commissioners are elected, and that's, we were trying to figure out as to why they were, as an exception.
I understand your question. I have my view of how one should interpret it, but I've tried to make clear that I'm not wading into that. I got my hands full between the general fund and the sewer fund and the cable fund. And when and if we're doing all that right, if the town fathers want me or whoever's in this position to wade back into those waters, then may the gods be with them.
So, my question about this article. Does this have to be voted for the town clerk and the sewer commissioners?
Yes, it's statutory.
Okay.
And no, you
why-
haven't been doing it correctly all along.
Right, so if it's statutory,
Mhm.
what is the compelling feature of that statute? Is it so that the treasurer can cut the checks to pay these people?
So they can be paid at all.
So they can be paid at all?
Yeah.
Okay,
Uh,
so,
They're in the
Chapter
budget.
41, Section 108, and I've given Jeff a copy. The salary and compensation of all elected officers of a town shall be fixed annually by vote of the town at an annual town meeting. It can be amended at a special, provided you haven't set the tax rate. And then there's some, yeah, but you can do this and you can do that.
thank you.
The town had previously taken the position that if the money was in the budget, and the budget got adopted, that set the salary.
Right,
I really don't feel that that meets the test of the statute or is very transparent.
okay. So,
So if any community is doing it without putting this statute, it's not
The
necessary.
majority of the towns that I know do it this way. There are some that do it the other way. They take the position of, well, the money was in the budget, you could have known what it was gonna be, and you adopted the budget, therefore you set the salary.
I still don't see
I'm
how
not
you
comfortable with that approach.
all right, so what authority does the treasurer have to cut checks for the light and water commissioners?
Don't know, haven't questioned it, not going into those waters.
Okay.
That would be up to a 10 taxpayer suit, I'm not getting into it. And I'm not well-versed in the special statute that creates municipal light pants. There may be something in there. I haven't waded into those waters at all.
All right. Article 21 is the general fund operating budget fiscal year 2019. And the question was, there's 220, 298 here. On the summary page in the front of the book, it's $67 less.
And I'll fix that by when we do the breakdown, add 67 to snow and ice. That's gonna be a lot cleaner than trying to rewrite this.
And the electronic
thing.
copy still shows, 315, whatever it is.
315,481.
Because you have to look at the revision pages.
Which, are they
No.
available on the website?
They should be, there should be a revisions tab
I
down
would,
at the bottom.
I thought when we get the final budget, it would be right, without having to find pages. You know?
It's right and it's serviceable.
Yeah, and it's, yeah, right.
Because the last time we looked at the webpage, it did say the 8,315,000 number.
Yes, that's the draft that went out there.
Well, we were concerned that somebody would look at the website and think that's the actual budget.
Well, I'm hopeful that they'll look at the voter's guide, which we hope to have completed in the next week or so.
Okay, that was the sticking point
Mhm.
with that one. It was, had three different numbers, and again, it was
Easy fix.
like that, the agricultural signage, we were trying to come up with the math and just didn't compute.
I would suggest to you that rather than grinding over it for 35 minutes, it would be easier to just set it aside and ask me the next night.
Oh, this is discussion, that's all.
Whatever you want to do with your lifetime.
Yeah, well, doing our job.
All right, Article 22 is for the collective bargaining agreement. And Article 23 is funding the collective bargaining agreement of the police and the dispatch.
These are both driven by Chapter 150, Section 7. Again, you've not been doing this statutorily correct. You are required by law, technically within 30 days of having reached a collective bargaining agreement, to present it to the town meeting. Normally, we are able to reach it with the unions with an understanding of the wait till the annual or the special. Town meeting only, you may recall this from the fall of 16, you did the highway union. The only authority of town meeting is funding of articles. They can't change language. We gave you the tentative agreement, I believe, with the package. They can, it's yay or nay on the funding. And if they no, then we have to go back to the bargaining table and start over. This is a one-year agreement. It was simply not possible to reach a 3-year agreement within the 4 weeks that I had. So we agreed to 1 year, and then after town meeting, we'll get a start on a 3-year contract.
I might, Jeff. I just had a question relating to this here, because when we were talking about this last night, one of the things that came up is that it appears that in the Board of Selectmen's budget for the, compensation for the non-union members and so on and so forth, you have money, that money is also allotted for the CBA, union contract. And there's, I believe it's $20,000, no, it's $40,000 overall, but I believe there's $20,000 of that's kind of specified for the police station. In this, it seems as though the $22,000 for the initial, or for Article 22, is coming from police's budget as present because of the lack of the 2 senior officers. But the 6,000 would be coming from that, so that would seem to, in my simple terms here, leave a $14,000 float in that, Board of Selectmen budgetary raise process that was set out for this. These numbers seem to be set out
Yeah,
for this.
conceivably, and unfortunately, the police chief was on vacation when I did this, and your system here allows department heads to put people on the payroll without necessarily having to come through the TAs. So one of the people is not being paid that $19.65. They're actually being paid about $2 an hour higher. So I do expect that during the course of the year, I will end up backfilling some of that. And the chief ironically tells me it's in that $13,000 plus or minus range.
I was just looking for snow and ice money.
No, you're right. So we do have the non-union, non-contractual that still have to be dealt with. And then we'll see where we are during the course of the
Yeah.
year.
All right, thank you.
Had the chief been here, it would have actually lined up, to tell me, it would have lined up almost spot on.
Okay. 23. 24. Okay, Article 24 is the override, and I think you explained, one of the points that we had was sticking was that 23,000 for the police. I think we figured it out with the 13 and the other,
The cuts.
in the,
The 8
when we went back through the budget
Yeah,
document.
it was the
actually
8
took-
Yeah,
and
there was a revise there, and the
Mhm.
290, I think the confusion there is you were taking the salary request only, and then subtracting and saying, hey, that's not
We-
290.
we
But
did
you have to
find
take
it,
the
I think.
total fire department budget, 745 and change, take out the 20 that is actually capital. So now the request is 725. You take the approved of whatever it is, 413 or something, you're around 307 and change, and it's 291 instead of 307, because there were simply some cuts there. I think you just grabbed the wrong math. The odd numbers on the snow and ice, real simple, because when I do an override, wherever that's 75 cents, it gives me an extra $116, I go for it. If it's 217, I go for it. I max out and override to the even, because it's my one chance to get a couple extra dollars into the budget.
If this, if the ballot doesn't pass, if
There is
this,
no Plan B.
there's,
This will be the budget.
No Plan B.
so whatever is in the front section, because the salaries and stuff are set aside, you zero that out to cover for the, be covered by the override.
That'll be the town's budget.
Okay.
There is no way, first you'd have to pay for a special, because any contingent appropriation at an annual town meeting must be voted on by September 15th. So you can't wait for November. Secondly, you can't just appropriate the money and hope for the best, because if something goes wrong, you'll have spent July, August, September, October, November. Then you have to lay everybody off. Also, a number of the expenses that we have to pay for the ambulance are paid in full in July. So if the override passes, and then the appropriation passes, we'll have a baseline budget and then a supplemental budget, and you marry those together. If the override does not pass, there will simply be a motion to pass over the supplemental budget. So So I hope that that answers
Yep, that's,
that question.
One other question. This only supplements our budget for the 4 people that we need to put on for the fire EMS this year. We need an additional 4
And the part-time administrative assistant.
right, and we need an additional 4 people that they've told us we had to have in subsequent years.
Well, I'm not telling you need an extra 4. I'm not telling you need an extra 2. I'm telling you that this is the money you have, and the chief's gonna have to figure it out.
I thought at one time we said that we needed to take and end up doing, a day.
There was a discussion at some
day
point
shift.
that they wanted to do 6 career firefighters. You don't have that money today, you're not gonna have that money tomorrow. And as long as I'm here, I'm never gonna come in here and ask you for it.
And there's not a statutory requirement of any kind with this ALS for that? Okay, because that was my
Provided
understanding.
we can make the Office of Emergency Medical Services happy that we're keeping the system staffed. You only have 750 calls a year.
That was what we were trying to understand is the staffing going forward as to the requirements that were put on the community.
If somebody comes in and asks for more, should ask them to go away and never darken your door again.
so the
You need
money,
You don't have the money, you just,
You need, you
Right.
the
have
funding
vacation
that was
time?
there to pay for, when we approved 2 full-times last year, the funding, the money that was there to cover the cost of those 2, I'm assuming, and that's a bad thing to do, but I'm thinking that since you're asking for an override to cover 4, the 2 you had and plus 2 more, the funding was eaten up by other
everything,
costs.
everything else. I mean, by the time you took and I think we gave you a sheet on this.
Right.
By the time you took all your new revenues, you took away the 2.5% we wanted to give Monty Tech, the 2.5% we wanted to give the school district. You only had $59,000 left.
So
And then we gave you a list of everything else you had to cover. You were about 240 grand, 260 grand in the hole before you even started to look at the normal, ordinary inflationary pressures.
So I'm having happy thoughts for fiscal 2020, because we ain't really making headway. We're just
We're
treading
never.
water with this override.
We'll be shoveling money at this thing forever and a day.
Well, no, it's just,
At the budget.
Absent substantial new growth in your property tax base, or substantial new growth in state revenue, absent some means of controlling educational expenses, absent some dramatic shedding of town services, you are locked in a cycle that's
Yeah,
not a good one.
It's not
and
sustainable.
the state doesn't look like they
gonna cough it up.
didn't go anywhere on transportation,
No.
really.
It went up $1 million.
That's nothing.
You know, it's not gonna, I don't have to exert a lot of extra effort to carry that $6,000 around.
So even if we do this
Percentage.
override, we still need vacation time for people? We
That's in
need
here.
replacements? That's
in
all
there.
in
The
there?
backfill's in
Yeah,
there.
Well,
that's
then-
there for the year.
For
It
the
covers
year.
for the
For the
year.
year,
This year.
but I'm talking
Right.
2 years, 3 years.
Next year,
Everything gets eaten
It'll
up
just
by
eaten up.
the increase
You
in
need to
all
have
the
these
other
discussions with
associated
your
costs.
partners at the regional school district and in the community next door. If you cannot control these educational expenses, or generate those revenues,
Yeah.
or shed a substantial number of town services, it's a cycle. It's
It just is.
just straightforward math.
All right, that's right.
That
It's
don't
gonna hurt people so bad. I don't think people understand this whole thing. I don't think the information they've got is good. That's my opinion.
Then I would look for your support on moving the town election after the town meeting, so we can have one more additional means of communicating with them.
You know, it's so emotional, but I don't think people understand the financial mess this town is in. Anyway, that's my thought.
Article 25.
If I may, real quick, before we leave that one, on the ballot questions, there was
Oh, that's right.
a question, my understanding is, well, why is the override have a number, and why doesn't the debt exclusion? It's statute.
Yes. The override has a number, I think capital
Override,
overlay.
capital exclusions must use numbers, debt exclusions do not. That paper will give a number of, the explanations as to why.
Why wasn't the police department ballot question put on as a capital debt
Exclusion?
Yeah,
There is no capital debt exclusion.
well, capital
There's
exclusion.
debt exclusions, there's capital exclusions. Capital exclusions tend to be one-year items. So if you want to have a capital exclusion to buy a truck, the size of that project with the tax base that you have. So if you're in the last community I have where a dollar raised $2,700,000, you could have a one-year debt exclusion and the tax rate's going up $1. If you were to try for a capital exclusion, the tax rate would have to go up right around $4 for the 1 year.
But when you look at that ballot question, a lot of people are gonna look at it as if it's a blank check.
Yep.
And that's, I don't think that bodes well for it, so
It's-
that's,
I have to do what the statute,
right.
I think that you're gonna get burned on this one.
I was instructed to place it there. I will not opine on the merits.
You're burned.
Okay, Article 25, we had that explanation.
Yep.
26 and 27, we did not have any issues with those.
We had 3 meetings on Article 27. Collective attendance, 6 people.
Mhm.
Okay. So we had no question on that. What, the one that we did was 28. And it's more of a concern that with no real basis, it hasn't been in place. So I know the DOR has an estimate and it's like through you have an estimate but it's just that, it's a guess.
You don't
Maybe
even know
it's a
if it's gonna
good
happen.
guess, but it's just a guess. And
The DOR, there's a little over 200, more than 250 communities that now have adopted the meals tax. And for DOR, it's more than a guess, because they have actual reported tax history for the community. So they're able to look at that data and to project so here's how much we collected at 6.25. Do the math backwards, add this 0.75. So I'm really very comfortable with this. I was a little more comfortable when I was able to have the reserve for overlay at that higher number. It didn't have to cut it $85,000 for the school assessment. The other thing that we thought was very important, we had some people talk to us and say we recognize the need for the capital. But how do we know it's gonna be stuck to capital? How do we know you aren't gonna just take the money and do something else with it? So we really thought it very important to signal to the town that in fact we were tying it to capital, and we were tying it there for 3 years. Now, a future select board or a future town meeting can do whatever it wants. But we thought, between being very, very comfortable with the DOR numbers, and much more importantly, the need to signal to the community how the monies were gonna be used and how that was being committed, that this needed to be there. Also, I didn't wanna spend the free cash.
And my personal issue with that is a town with an $8 million plus general fund operating budget with $196,000 in cash sitting on a table is gonna take a 3-year lease on a car and a pickup truck.
And then in 3 years, do it again, and then in 3 years, hopefully, do it again, and in 3 years, do it again. Yes.
I just would think it would be financially smarter to buy them outright. don't have to worry about future bills, future revenue that may or may not be there, and own them outright, and then in 2 years, upgrade them while they still have value. That's just my
If this was a
personal-
community that had sufficient monies and was committed to a cash-only purchase policy, and every year, so for instance, every year on the fire department equipment, let me just use that, they were setting aside $175,000. In that 5th year, when you need to buy the fire truck, yeah, the cash is there, you don't lease it. But you're not that community. And to try to design a capital program that relies exclusively on free cash, especially given this town's history of A, getting it certified, and B, it's not necessarily in the past been that much. We felt that it was important to signal to the community how we were gonna do it, and to have a path forward to try to sustain these capital purchases.
Which, if you're content, if your point is free cash is certifying is maybe iffy, I don't know why we're letting 196 float on by rather than putting it somewhere, like the capital stabilization fund, which has, I think,
I think
42,000.
That's one we'll have to disagree on, the financial management policy that the board adopted
Yeah, well,
envisions exactly the path that we followed. This is a path that's not uncommon in other communities, rolling that money forward so that you have cash in the till at the beginning of the year. It's a good thing.
Did these other communities have a bond rating?
I don't know.
I think they probably
If
did. How
what
many
every
other
community
communities don't
does
have a bond
does that.
rating? Okay, so when,
There's 351 in this.
when we
That
compare
was the-
ourselves
I
to
don't
other
know.
communities, I think that needs to be to the forefront, and putting the free cash into capital stabilization will help us get a bond rating. Not right away, it's gonna take time.
This is gonna be a
but
very
not doing it
painful
makes it
process.
longer.
Right. But my point that I'm trying to make is that we submit articles. The ambulance receipts reserved article, when it was voted in, people were told and reassured that that money was going to fund the ambulance service, not being taken out to go to the general fund, to go to the fire department, EMS. That's not what we were told. Now, that was
That's what
back in time, okay, and I understand that. But things have a way of changing. The best intentions of the world, in the world, do not ensure carry through, okay? To make sure it's followed through. So, right now, the intention is to use the meals tax to fund a capital expenses for vehicles. That's the intention, and that's why this is written the way it is. But there's no guarantee,
No, on these kinds of things, there is no guarantee.
right?
Can I say
Because the
something?
selectmen can change and the town meeting can change.
The numbers you got from the DOR
Mhm.
are not gonna be any good a month from now. We had a little restaurant in Templeton. She didn't do a lot of business, but she did some, so she had to pay meals tax. That chunk of change is gonna be gone.
But I'm very comfortable with this number.
I have a
The
question.
DOR
Can
number's
you?
actually
You just
higher.
lost a business.
I'm very comfortable with this number.
I mean, it don't make no sense.
Will,
My question is this, my understanding is there's a ballot question that's gonna be in November to reduce the sales tax on everything
Oh, yeah.
down to 5%. Once this passes, will that have an effect on this particular, quarter of a percent tax? If the overall, if the tax goes down, the state goes from 6.25 to 5, it will still stay in place.
Yours .75 will still stay in
You see
place.
what you're
You've
saying?
got a much larger issue
Yeah,
if that ballot question passes that has to do with your unrestricted general
Government aid.
government aid.
yeah,
But no, the .75
okay.
and on the,
You took it before they
stays the same. And if they raise it to 7, you're still .75. You are .75 on top of
Okay.
whatever. Now, I haven't seen the legislation that the ballot question, if they've tucked something away in there, and no one has seen it, and there's been no alerts out there, at this point,
And the
Yeah.
legislature may not follow it.
and the legislature may not follow.
They didn't follow the state income tax.
It would be devastating. It would be devastating.
On this one or the next one? Or just general?
Just in general.
Okay, so 28, is we done with that? I think that was our question. Okay, before we do 29, you wanna ask?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
had a question about, we have 196,000 if all of the articles pass at town meeting. Will be left floating out there.
It'll
That would-
roll into next year.
Right, it will roll into next year. It will have to be recertified.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. How much, I wasn't able to get to the audit meeting. Did anyone come up with a figure on anticipated free cash from closing of those books?
We don't have a balance sheet
Yeah.
yet for the close of the fiscal year. My gut is that you're gonna be in the high six figures. I wouldn't be surprised to see your free cash in the $900,000 range.
Okay, from just that one year, because, okay.
You have to remember that free cash certified last year
Mhm.
was hit for the deficit of the over expenditures
Right,
in the prior years, so that flows back in. So you got the
Okay.
190 plus the 230. I'd
Mhm.
have to look and see if the school, that was a deficit that you
Yeah.
got hit for. Some of that's, maybe all that's gonna flow back in.
Okay.
And then you'll have, we've had a very good tax collection year. The timbering was 20+ thousand dollars in excess of the estimate.
Mhm.
We've got the building permit from the school, which will be $150,000, which is not carrying the estimates anywheres. We've done our very best to really keep a fairly tight rein. You got a number of departments going in the last 2 months with some balances. Some of those really need to be spent. We've kind of tried to hold them back. But I think your free cash next year, I'd put the number at plus or minus 900.
Okay, and you don't see any problems from the DOR certifying that?
Not if we get a balance sheet to them on time, no.
Okay, and what's the drop dead for the balance sheet?
I'm gonna tell you, first I have to know what the town meeting date is, then I work backwards, but generally early September for
Okay.
our purposes. The town meeting is being driven by the need to try to get all of the bylaw changes in place that we need to do in order to become certified as a green community. And we have to have that package to the state by October 30. I need a week to package it up. If we're able, if we can't make that deadline at all, then we'll probably go back to the Veterans Day plus or minus like we were last year.
All right.
Mid-October is really a little bit too early generally, but we've got this October 30 date.
Okay.
Looming at us.
All set now?
Yep.
Article 29 is the authorized lease of capital items, the fire truck, and I believe a question was concerning the wording. With that future year lease, those funds be coming out of the general fund budget.
Yes. This is the 92.5 that you had in fiscal
That's what I thought.
18 had to pay on Baldwinville. So the choice was, do we take the 92.5 and just spend it in the operating budget? Or do we keep it on the capital side of the house? Given, and I know that lots of towns go, oh, thank God, 92.5, now I can hire that police officer, and now I can do this, or now I can do that. But we made a decision, I think the capital committee supported this, I think you had some discussions on this. The selectmen did as well, that we would keep that 92.5 on the capital side of the house and try to figure out how to get these big fire pieces, apparatus onto some sort of rotating basis that we can sustain. That's not gonna be easy. The one you're replacing is 31 years old. That's old. And buying one every 6 years means you're trying to get 36 out of them. And one of them is a ladder truck, which pops up for $500,000. So the idea that you can sustain replacing your fire apparatus with this is, it's just a start. Lots more to be done to figure out how to sustain it. Might mean reducing pieces of apparatus, might mean not having a fire truck, a ladder truck, and paying the towns around you a little something to make sure that when that mutual aid call comes in, they roll because they're getting paid.
We'll just take all the third stories off all the buildings.
There you go, that works.
I'd be interested in seeing the contest. You know.
Okay, is the maximum amount that can come out of free cash to subsidize this if it comes in over $25,000? The way this is written?
So if the interest rate comes in above 4 3/4, or if the chief can't back into this budget, you will simply have to get a little something less for options on the truck. Because this is the money, that's all there is.
Okay. All right, yep.
Mr. Chairman, there was a question regarding the wording.
Raising.
Did it indicate the future years would come out of the general fund?
Yes. So we're all set with that one?
So yes, future years will come out, but they'll be in the budget. They won't be as a standalone article. You won't see a standalone article again until year 7, when you go to lease your next piece of equipment. And then in year 8, it'll go back into the operating budget. So you need to remember when you look at some of these budgets, why is this up, why is this down? Sometimes it's because an item popped in or popped out, depending upon the cycle you're on.
All right.
Similar to your budget, if you had transferred your reserve fund out and, you know, only had $1,000 left, let's say, because you transferred everything, and then you get a $35,000 budget for next year, it would look like, how come their budget popped from 1,000 to 36,000? It didn't, it's just the cycle that you happen to hit.
Article 30, there was concern about the F-150 Interceptor. Is part of that being paid for by a contribution from the light and water?
Yes.
Is that the reason why they're only 35?
Yes. The light, and the light department has indicated they wish to only pay for capital purchases. And when I can pick one where I can just hand them the invoice, it works out perfect. But we've kind of brokered a number of what they'll do, and not everything fits perfect, and so sometimes I end up splitting it. It's a little messy, but
Okay.
I'll take the money in pennies, nickels, or dimes, however we can get it.
All right, I think that was
That was the question.
the
yeah.
question on that one. Article 31, 2/3 vote was the question, and it is required because there's stabilization.
It is a 2/3 vote. We missed that between the various iterations in the voter's guide. We'll have that. This is one that will have an amendment. I want you to be aware of it. And the amendment will be something like, and when the amount in the Pajari fund is reduced to 0 as a result of this transfer, the Pajari stabilization fund shall be dissolved.
Mhm.
It's something like that. Because that was a way that you had to segregate a gift. So that one, you'll see something different on that.
All right. I think we were all set on 32, 3, and 34.
On 32, I just have one question for the administrator.
Yes.
Over what period, on 32, what period of time are we looking to borrow that money for the fire station?
Well, some of that's gonna depend upon when I place the debt on the school project. So for next year, we actually have $1 million in there to pay down bond principal. So it is conceivable that we could still stick with the original plan, which was to try to pay for this over 2 or 3 years or something. If the school moves along much quicker and we're able to place the permanent debt on it, then we might have to go out a longer term. I'll have some numbers worked up by the time we get into town meeting. You know, I honestly can't tell you right now.
Okay.
I can tell you that it is conceivable we can stick with the original plan. Otherwise, it's gonna be about a 15 cent on the tax rate.
When would that be coming on?
$0.15 on the tax rate. I thought it was more than that.
Now, we'll do bond anticipation notes first. We'll do them in conjunction with the school. When will we go to permanent bonding on this one?
Yeah.
I don't know, probably within fiscal 19.
Because we had talked about some, like you, anywhere from 2 to 4 years.
Interestingly, if the project had come in close to estimates, yeah, we would have paid for it in 2 years exactly as anticipated. The bids, I don't know if you saw the one for the Gardner Airport, estimate 525, bid price 1.25 million. Pricing has just gone through the ceiling.
That was my question, thank you.
How's that, Lou? And on the next two articles are both the school budgets, Narragansett and Monty Tech. I mean, those numbers are the numbers, and, I mean, the town got a
I
couple
tried.
options, but,
I tried. I do hope that after the town meeting, that the three partners, the school district and the two towns, will put together a small working group. I would envision one from each board of selectmen, one from each advisory or finance committee, one from each town from the school committee, and on no less than every other month, you start looking at next year. And that we can try to move the budget earlier. The preliminary budget's by February 15, the final budget's by March 15.
I don't know why they don't have a concept that we have no industry in this town, and they keep jacking up what they want. It's so unfair to the people.
I would encourage you to go to the school committee meetings and ask them those
You know,
questions.
you know, talk to a lot.
all right, that concludes the rest of, the rest of the articles are citizens petitions,
Yep.
and we don't need town administrator here for that.
I do want to pass one thing along. I understand that you spent quite a bit of time looking through whether or not we accepted the statute 4130A. You will never find it, because you didn't, because you don't have to. You can do it by bylaw.
Which one's that? The town clerk or the town collector?
That'll save you anyone.
What you talking about?
Which is statute?
Yeah.
The tax collector, town collector.
It can get very confusing. The state statute, in some instances, you simply adopt the statute. In other instances, the statute is permissive and allows you to create something. So, for instance, you adopted the statute to create a council on aging. However, that statute doesn't work that way. It authorizes you to adopt a bylaw. You never did. In this instance, it authorizes you to designate your tax collector as a town collector for different purposes by adopting the statute or adopting a bylaw. You adopted the bylaw. So they don't make it easy, even for those of us who have been at it for a while.
So explain that again. We always had a tax collector.
You have a tax collector for the purposes of taxes, and for other items, the tax collector for those purposes is deemed to be a town collector.
That's funny.
The statute is not always,
What year was that statute put in place?
I don't recall, but I think you adopted this bylaw
1950.
many
51?
years ago.
Yeah, 1951.
I may have been celebrating my first birthday when you were adopting it, I don't know.
My daddy wasn't even thinking about
I
it.
was
I
still
don't think.
12 years from a thought.
Anything else I can do for you this evening? I've tried to stay tuned in, I've tried to answer as many questions that you've been asking over the past few weeks, the best I could. Sunday was rainy, so I couldn't hike. I listened to y'all.
The only thing that I,
Some
the only
information
thing that I
together.
have, and I,
If there's anything else in the future, just give me a shout.
the explanation, yes. The explanation of the Eve 911 grant. I'm still,
Mr. Chairman,
hold on.
can we end up, basically, you need a motion to recess if you're gonna go
Right,
into
but I'm
something
just
else?
going to, I'll email you the,
Jeff, I got that late, I didn't have a chance to really review it, I frankly didn't completely understand the
okay.
question.
Yeah, I'll email.
So just let me know or stop by someday. I
Okay.
do try to put at the bottom of the administrator's report which days I'm gonna be here each week.
So what does that fellow
So,
do? Oh, I just wanna know,
Hold on.
the kid.
We are
Right,
done.
dissolve it.
with you, we don't, that's
Okay.
all you can help us with. So,
I'd like to
You know.
end up making a motion to recess the pre-town meeting until 7 PM on August 9th for votes on the articles.
Oh, I guess.
May.
Oh, excuse me, May.
That would be a little
August,
late.
well, might not be live by then.
Well, hey,
I'll second that.
okay, we have a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Seeing none, Liz,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Bev,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Will,
yes,
Bob,
Yes.
yes.
that puts us back into the regular meetings, Mr. Chairman.
So,
And we are all set.
Thank you.
thank you, folks, have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Hopefully it'll be dry. The
Yeah.
trail last weekend, I sunk in about 4 or 5 inches of mud,
Whereabouts?
pitched forward into the rocks, so hopefully it's dried
Oh,
out.
yeah, that's,
Still snow up, much of it.
yeah.
Have a good night, folks.
You take care.
Yep. The bear thinks mud is a good thing on the trail.
Mhm.
He climbs a mountain.
Bear and water.
I guess we got it.
Somebody pays attention to our meetings, that's good to see.
Yeah, that's what?
That's good to see, somebody
So,
pays attention to our
Not
meetings.
all of them are you watching this.
This is true. I will have a format like I did previous for recording the votes of recommendations and stuff, so it'll be easy to assemble at the conclusion. And then my thing that I wanted to ask him, I'll do it in an email, because I don't wanna spend all night on it. The answer from the town accountant, and I sent the question that the balance for the E91 grant on the March 22nd expenditure ledger shows an allocated beginning balance of 157,60604 with 62,466.44 expended with an ending balance of 95,139.60. And then I indicated that on the April 23rd, it had allocated of 197,874.96 with the same expended amount, 62,466.44, with an ending of 135,408.52. I don't know if something was lost in translation or what, but the explanation was the beginning fiscal year balance for the E911 grant, which began July 1 of 2017, was at 78,270.58. The revenue number of 119,604.38, with expenses of the 62,466.44, leaves an available balance of the 135,408.52. However, not addressed is the 157 back on March.
And the 197.
I'm gonna resend this and follow through on that.
Okay.
Could that have been just a keying error? Is that exactly off by?
So that explains sort of the April thing, but where's this 157 come from? And it does not expand on the 95,139.60 or the 157,606.04.
You've been spending too much time with Will?
It explains, actually, I've been getting up in the morning
I know, 4
with the
o'clock.
bear. I have my coffee time, I have to have my time sometime. So, like I said, and I
Doesn't.
included those three items in those 3 lines. I did the 157, the expense, the leftover for this expenditure ledger. I did the same with this one, and then the revenue. I got an explanation of how you would come to the April one, but where did the 157 come from?
Yeah, it's not a keying error,
It
because it's
just,
not up by.
she didn't address that. I just,
Run and I'll ask again.
so, I mean, I'll probably lose a little sleep over it, but.
Oh, God, that.
And and I'll make copies of that and all of the other handouts that, he only had 1 copy of each. And have them for Wednesday.
Is there any way that they can scan those and send them to us, Mr. Chairman?
Am I scanning those and sending? No, there's no way for me to scan them
Okay, I'm just,
above my educational level.
Do you want me to scan them and send them on?
You know what? You're the next clerk for the advisory committee.
ooh,
I'll second that.
I'm resigning.
I'll still be here. All right, I will do that, hand them to you. Unless we have anything else, I would make a motion to adjourn and see you all. I have 6:30 posted. Do you want to just come in at 7, or do you want to come in at 6:30? I've got
That's-
time to change it.
this is the time that they can change the time if you want, I mean,
What's easier, would that be easy for you to get here, Paul, at 7? 7. I'll change the time till 7. It's
you can
posted
still,
right now
you
for
can still
6:30.
end up having the meeting start at 6:30, and then resume the pre-town meeting.
We'll come at 7. All right? So I will update that, 7 PM. And I'll reduce the stuff that's on the agenda, because I had it.
You did a nice job, Jeffrey.
Don't lie to me like that.
No, don't lie, I wouldn't.
So if we're all set,
Lie to you.
right, Liz?
No, I'm,
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion. Hey, quiet in the peanut gallery here, this is serious business.
Hi.
Actually, well, no, thank you for coming, we're not used to having anybody waste their time with us. Although somebody watches us on TV, apparently.
break a long time.
Yeah, you guys were good.
Now, the thing is, we're back.
Well, that's true.
I gotta start a new
Motion
sweater.
motion to adjourn?
So move.
Madam Gavaz.
Second.
Motion made and seconded.
Yes,
All those in favor?
Hey.
Anyone opposed? Yeah, I'll stay.
all right,
No bear says I gotta go home.
all right.
All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all